Welcome back to Mental Health Matters. We got another great show for you today, and we're continuing on with the theme of Ken's Big Four. Sleep, activity, transcendence, and Nutrition, yeah, absolutely. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to sum up a little bit about what we did last time in terms of sleep and activity, and get a little bit more into that regarding especially transcendence and nutrition and anything else we could think of to really make a difference. You are listening to Mental Health Matters with Dr. Scott Terry. Today, think about what you can do to make a difference in your life today. You're listening on KRUU 100.1 on your FM dial, and be willing to look at change for yourself today, even if you're doing fantastic. Time to take it up just one little notch there. So, Danielle, co-hosting here today, and tell us how, if they wanted to find out some old shows, maybe if they didn't get a chance to listen last week, what...
Yeah, so you guys can check out the archives on the KRUU101.com.
Right, no, it's KRUU FM.com,
and then you can also look on the Ardent Counseling Center YouTube station, where we've got past shows you can
that are actually made into video, so it's really kind of cool, as well as some lectures that I've done, and some really cool ones on suicide prevention, a whole bunch of things. And where else?
Yeah, and you can also contact us at scott@ardentcenter.com, which is ARDENT.
So scott@ardentcenter.com. If you've got it, we get emails all the time. And for instance, a couple weeks ago, we got one on personality disorders, and we're going to talk about that in a few weeks. And, anything that you want that touches your life. And again, we're here to get those juices flowing. So time to wake up and do something with our lives today. It's not what we feel. It's not what we think. It's what we're going to create from it, so that we can get back to what we feel and think to even make a bigger difference in our lives and the lives of those around us. So, Ken, tell us about yourself. Tell us about, let's sum up what we did last week, and then let's go into the next phase of this.
Hi, Ken Daley. I work at Maharishi University of Management, where I'm a professor in exercise and sports science, and I'm also the...
Which we were talking about how important that is, by the way, last time, which if you didn't hear, thinking about this notion of wellness and what a professor of exercise and sports science really means, listen before and ask Ken.
So we're moving very much from exercise and sports science. In the last few years, I've started really emphasizing the concept of wellness, and wellness being that aspect of our lives where we grow to something more. So often,
and you're doing this in other areas as well. You're doing it in the Blue Zone and getting campaigns to get people to quit smoking, and to change people's lives wherever you can, to expand this notion of wellness. So, I'm sorry, go on with wellness.
No, deep wellness is what we're hunting for, deep wellness.
Oh, I love that.
A deep wellness. So, yeah, that's where we're trying to encourage. So often when we think of mental health, we start to think of problems, but it's not. It's mental wellness. It's the growth aspect that we're trying to emphasize here. And to summarize some of the stuff we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks, is that there are 4 big things that we have to pay attention to our lives that make us well. And if we don't, they'll make us sick. And the first and foremost on that list is sleep. Are you getting your 8 hour to 9 hours of sleep a night?
And you actually gave us a specific number, which was interesting.
8 hours and
I've never
20 minutes.
Okay, and so why... Okay, and then we're talking about the range between 7.5 and 9 hours, and it kind of depends when I fall asleep and how much I sleep, and sleep cycles being an hour and a half about, and, it's
and
the
individual
depth of
variations.
Sleep. Right, and the depth of sleep. And those circadian rhythms certainly change with daylight savings time and light and dark and yada yada. But it's really that range, and you know what's working for you. And if you're waking up and feeling fatigued during the day, or you're going to sleep and it's like, oh, I sleep like a rock and won't wake up for anything, and I fall asleep within minutes, that's another red flag, by the way. That's not a good thing
No. Sleep is a very, ultimately we're really not, from a scientific perspective, really know what sleep does.
Well, it releases the toxins from the brain. We do know that.
There's things
and
that it does.
Integrate what's happened during our day. It integrates it within our brain. And if we don't get enough REM sleep, I thought it was so true. I love this show. There's this Star Trek show. Sorry, I'm geek here. And they weren't allowed to get REM sleep. And after a couple days, they started going psychotic. And that's reality. If you go without REM, you will go psychotic. So the whole sleep cycle is essential. And I love how you were saying before that, for instance, it should take 10 to 15 minutes to fall asleep. That's healthy.
That's healthy. That's normal.
And you should have some energy during the day. And again, getting that depth of sleep. And if you're drinking or taking drugs or eating too big of a meal at night, so this goes into our other thing we're talking about, nutrition in a minute. If I'm eating too late or I'm having too much meat or cheese or something that's heavy, it takes a week to digest to begin with, right? If it takes forever, I'm not gonna go and have deep quality sleep, and it's going to be hard for me to fall asleep.
And the other problem is that if you're waking up at night for different reasons, every time you wake up, your next cycle, 90-minute cycle, your REM sleep will be shorter. So as the night progresses, your REM time increases over if you stay asleep all night.
Yes.
But if you wake
deeper.
up, it gets longer each time. But if you break it, the sleep up, the next REM cycle will be less than it should be.
Yes.
And again, like you were saying a minute ago, that there's definitely research that's indicating that it has aberrations that it starts creating in the psychology.
Absolutely.
So sleep is ground zero in all health and wellness. Ground zero. Get that one cleaned up, and then you can start to think about doing other stuff.
Absolutely. And I think it really, when we talk about these big four, they all fit together as a package. So everybody needs to begin exercise. But again, that matters on where you're at today. Not who you were 10 years ago, not who you'll be in 10 years from now, but today. What works for your body today. But if I'm doing, a lot of people I know work out after work. Well, if I work late and I'm not done with my exercise till 8 at night or something, it could take 3 to 5 hours for the body temperature to re-regulate and for our nervous systems to calm down enough for us to go to sleep. So it's not always what we're doing, it's when we're doing it, how we're doing it, how we're allowing ourselves to come back to grounding and settling out afterwards. And so maybe after a heavy lifting session or a heavy running session, I might need to do some yoga or some, it's not just to get the lactic acid out of my system that I might need to slow down afterwards, but it's also reintegrating back to being slower.
And again, that comes back to a total lifestyle. How do you create balance in your physiology? I like the Buddhist expression of the middle way. How do you create balance? And a balance is, by definition, in the middle. It's no place else. It has to be in the middle, someplace. And that doesn't mean that we can't have extremes, but the extremes have to be able to be balanced. So if you get really physically active, then you need to have very deep rest. Like athletes, very often you were talking about how much sleep. Athletes oftentimes do require an hour extra sleep than non-athletes. And again, it has a way of balancing out the extremes.
And so again, and children need far, far more sleep than adults.
Absolutely. And a newborn requires 18 to 20 hours.
Right. And teenagers require
at least 10 to 12, likely.
Okay, so I hope everyone heard this. Teenagers need 10 to 12 hours, not 6 to 7 hours, which is what they're often getting.
And at the wrong time of day.
Right. And, that also is interesting. So an Ayurveda concept is also consistent with a circadian rhythm issue, where if I'm going to bed too late, it also means that I'm in my cycle will start pumping me back up. And so I might think I'm more productive, but I'm not. Just like people who multitask. And by the way, multitasking doesn't work, in case anybody wants to know.
And actually, there is no such a thing as multitasking.
Yes.
All the brain is doing is, and the body is switching very quickly, but each switch requires you to gear up against, so you're actually less productive.
Yes. So we could talk about that forever. We could do a show just on that topic. So, but, absolutely. So it's also when I'm going to sleep, how I'm getting sleep. But again, that's the biggest one to address.
And then the next one, I think, fundamentally, is nutrition. Getting the proper nutrients into one's body. It's like that's what fills the gas tank. And if the gas tank is running on empty all the time, I see people that are concerned about their body weight, so they start cutting back their nutritional intake, calories in particular, but total food intake. What happens is that they oftentimes get exhausted, and then they start maladjusting to anything in their lives because the physiology has been distorted chemically because it was too much of a change. Moderation, a little tweak. So with nutrition, I think that if you can modify your diet with small increments, which are difficult, but you just little small increments to move it to where you want to be. And where you want to be is a pretty unique place. Your physiology, you tweak it to that place.
And it's not where you were before. We think this diet worked for me before, right? But it's not that.
No. As you age, your physiology shifts, your hormonal balance shifts. There's a lot of
that
transition.
Doesn't mean being old. It means
it just adjusts.
From 25 to 30, your age, your body's changed, and you have to readapt to who I am in that body at this time. And part of this, for me, is an existential question as well. Who am I? So if I have an accident, right, I've got to readjust to my body has betrayed me. Who am I? How do I trust myself again? Because it's never about trusting others. Sorry to bring in the therapy world here, but it's people often, that person violated my trust. Happens in every relationship, every single time I see anybody. But it's the first and foremost is, how do I trust myself again? It's like forgiveness isn't about forgiving the other person, and it's not certainly about turning the other cheek. It's about forgiving myself for being hurt, even if I couldn't control it. I hurt me. And how do I forgive myself for the pain that I've let into my life, even if I had no control over it, even if I was a child? And so that sense of, how do I trust myself again? What works for my body now? So if I've had an accident or an injury, how do I readjust to who I am today and stop comparing myself to my glory days or to some time in the future that the future focus we've talked about in the past, but the whole point of the future focus is to bring it back to the present, to take that boon, that elixir, that possibility. We were talking about the call to adventure a couple shows ago, and bringing that back, that winning of who I am, projecting ourselves into who we can be, and bringing that to now, this moment, setting that goal, writing it down, making it happen today. So getting back to the thought of nutrition, it's really central. And again, it also works with when we're talking about sleep. Again, if I'm not having the proper nutrition, I'm not going to get the depth of sleep I need. Right? So
Absolutely.
Ayurveda would say highest time to eat would be at noon. Have your biggest meal. Digestive juices are high. Some people might say breakfast. But it's certainly early in the day, not late in the day, because what would I do with that energy? I'm having these empty calories, or I'm drinking, or I'm doing stuff. The best way to lose weight isn't exercise. You need that, obviously.
Sure.
But it's through your diet.
Absolutely. You take 240 calories. You got to walk for an hour to get off 240 calories. You take a look at...
What does 240 calories look like?
Yeah, about a bag of M&Ms.
Really?
One bag of M&Ms, you got to walk for an hour.
Okay, so I don't eat candy, so what is another one?
It depends. It depends on how much of what you're doing. So if it's carbohydrate or protein. See, we get energy from a lot of different sources. About 17% of our energy actually comes from protein, breaking down protein.
Oh, really?
So there's lots of ways that we're getting energy from carbohydrates, and whether it's coming from complex sugars or simple sugars, the amount of that will vary, and also the quality of the food that you're eating.
Tell us more about that. What does that mean, quality of our food?
You take a look at
By the way, let me interrupt you for 1 second. Sorry to do this. You're listening to KRUU 100.1 on your FM dial. Today on Mental Health Matters with Dr. Scott Terry, we're talking about, Ken?
the big four:
Which are?
sleep, nutrition, physical activity, and transcendence.
And what does that mean, transcendent? We're going to talk about that in a second. But transcendence, just to give
get-
people a primer, prime them up.
Yeah, to get beyond. Could be to get beyond your own mind. It can get to be to get beyond your limited focus of what you are in life to something bigger.
And sometimes tools such as meditation really help with that.
Sure.
But sometimes if I'm doing meditation, for instance, maybe I need to get beyond in other ways in my life.
Right.
Right? And ground that meditation, do that growth, that take, again, that elixir, that boon that I've gotten by going deep inside myself, and now do something to make a difference in my life and the lives of others around me.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
So when we're taking the big four, like we had sleep, nutrition, physical activity, we've talked about it quite a bit back and forth, and that's two things. There's two aspects of physical activity that one of them that is exercise, like we've talked about, but it's not exercise in the gym. It's like exercising in the world that you live in, being able to find physical activity in the day-to-day world. So instead of taking a car, can you take a bike? If you can't take a bike, can you walk? It's like that's your ultimate is always to walk to the next location.
It's being in the body. It's not just the big things. If I'm sitting all day long, which is one of the worst things, right, you could do.
Sure, absolutely.
And that's what we all do. We sit and we sit and we sit. Getting even to the gym for an hour a day doesn't ameliorate the difficulties of just the sitting.
No, sitting is an independent variable. Absolutely independent variable for longevity.
And
so every hour, you've got 45 minutes to an hour, you've got to get at least a couple of minutes up with the juices flowing, something going on with the body. Whether you're swinging your arms or leg bends or vibrating, I don't mind, as long as you're doing something for about 2 or 3 minutes every hour. That seems to have a massive effect on longevity.
Absolutely. And so there's a study done saying that standing desks, there was both sides, two studies that said contradictory things. One that it really doesn't do a whole lot by having a standing desk, and one saying it sort of does. The point is, it's not just standing there as well, it's also doing something, moving. My wife, I love her setup. She's got a little mini trampoline under her that she stands on to work on her computer.
Right.
So she bounces every now and then and keeps moving.
Right.
And it's like, oh my God, I got to do something like that. Mm-hmm. And it's like, so keep going.
So what we need to do here is we got to make sure we've got enough movement in our lives. But the other thing is that you've got to be sure that the activity that what we do for an occupation, if you want, is something that creates for you meaning, purpose. You've got to make sure that when you're contributing to society, are what you're doing nurturing.
So coming back to this transcendence thing.
This is before dead end job. You got a job that you don't love, right?
Yeah.
Even though you're getting activity and it's supporting you and
you're getting money, but what are you doing with your money?
Yeah. No, it's a death trap. So you got to make sure that what you're doing has a sense of purpose. So this is a transition. It's physical activity, what you do in the world, but then it starts to move into this level of what I call transcendence. And transcendence is a continuum. I can think of a continuum of transcendence like meditation, where the mind becomes still, much more still. And that's what I would call a pure transcendence. And that has its very strong benefit. The research on meditation, especially transcendental meditation, is pretty unequivocal that it's very beneficial for most all people.
Absolutely. And I know people have issues because of philosophy, and sometimes it worked for them, or sometimes it's pushed on them, or sometimes they're, it's those people. Stop with letting your philosophies rule you in life. Come back to what pragmatically makes things work for you so your life gets better. The reason I push the transcendental meditation is because the only meditation that I've found that actually gets a real serious neurochemistry shift. I see a lot of veterans who have had really traumatic PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, with traumatic brain injuries. And it is the most powerful thing I found to shift their neurochemistry and have them be able to shift who they are so we can make some other differences in their life. It's not just meditate and you're done.
Right.
Or meditate your problems away. It's just like you pray and then you act on that prayer. You do something. It's not just I exercise for a few minutes now and then, but then I sit all night. You have to integrate your life.
Yeah, trust in God, tie your camel again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm doing something with what's going on.
Right.
And it's the same with all this stuff. So yes, and it also means both sides of the coin. So if I'm transcending every day and I'm meditating in a deep, profound way where I'm getting a neurochemistry shift as well as, bathing in this greater state of consciousness and doing something more from that level, that's wonderful. That will get rid of your stress. That will help immensely. But that's not it.
No, because what that, in a sense, is a kind of a very dry place on one level. It's not very... there's another place that it can go to, and that is reaching out to humanity. And it's kind of the physical manifestation of pure transcendence is living in the world and reaching out to humanity and finding greater purpose. Or a concept of God. I mean, I'm not saying, hey, you have to become religious, but some sense of greater purpose. Even as an atheist, you can have great purpose in one's life.
Yes.
In fact, many times atheists have very strong purpose, extremely developed sense of ownership of the world around them.
I love how you said that, ownership of the world around you. Because you're right, it's not just, I'm being a good person because I'm in church. Are you walking out of that church and then doing something? I walk over the homeless person as I walk out of church because I don't really care. I did the good thing, I prayed, or I meditated today, No, do something to make a difference in others' lives so and it impacts who you are. Because then you get to be that good person.
Well, and even I think there's a selfish aspect of that also, that people who have a sense of greater purpose in life, the research is someplace between 2, even up to 8 years of longevity are associated with people who have a sense of transcendence, of greater purpose in their lives.
So you're not just living longer, you're also living better.
Well, that in most cases, the people that are contributing to society, we know that volunteers have, in a sense, it's a selfish act.
Yeah, I really like that you describe it as a continuum, the transcendence, and how a selfish act can look like a selfless act, and bringing that transcendence into action in acts of service or dance or whatever have you, that gives you that container of something more.
And it takes you to a different place, but it also has that sense, it also takes your environment. Community, it creates community. By the very act of reaching out to others, you create community, and then you have a community of people who are interested in transcendence, not only pure transcendence, but also in the world that they live in and helping other people.
I love how you just said that phrase. You've come up with these awesome phrases. Community, right, is community. Community fosters community.
Right.
And it's beautiful.
And how that's going to take place, though, is that it's reaching out. There has to be action. To sit within the self has its purpose, but what is
an essential purpose?
Absolutely essential purpose. It's one of those legs, the 4 legs of the stool that of life.
Yes.
But each one of them we pull on, we tweak it, the others move. So transcendence is going to affect sleep. It's going to affect what you eat. It's going to affect what you do. In your food is going to affect how you sleep. It's going to, sleep affects all. There's no.
Everything's tied together. Integration is the key.
Compartmentalization of a life does not exist. You cannot put your problems in a box and hide away. It's like it's not over there.
Well, I get that with couples all the time. They could be the most dynamic person at work and making a difference, and they could be a great parent, but they are terrible with their partner. And it's just like, it doesn't work. No, everything affects everything else. We have to think of everything as systemic. That and also, by the way, in relationships, the easiest way to affect change is by, if I change, I affect those around me. So if I'm able to transcend, guess what? Everybody around me, my partner, will start changing in response to me changing and getting my act together.
It's in a Christian tradition, we sometimes call that witnessing. It's like,
ooh, interesting.
By acting out, you become an instrument of God, because it manifests your behavior. So sometimes witnessing is spreading the gospel, but fundamentally that's likely more of an aberration. The true usefulness of witnessing is to be an authentic human being, and when you are an authentic human being, then the world starts perceiving you and as an authentic person, and then what does that do? Well, it gives them that shining example of something that's great. And it's not by trying to pretend, you just become.
No, absolutely. It's felt, that authenticity, and it encourages it in the environment around you. What we're talking about, I'm reminded of that saying, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And it also gives you that perspective of, okay, if I, instead of running around and doing the dishes all crazily, it gives you that little bit of space to make small changes by looking at things that way. And also, as a whole, how what you do anything really does influence everything in your life.
Yeah, we do not. It's this body-mind continuum, and then when you get body-mind, then the environment is just an extension of that.
Well, the extension is that extension of that relationship that I'm having with myself, and my relationship with one other, and then others, the sub-society, the community that I'm part of, that I've now fostered to create that community for me. Then the environment is part of that. We kill that environment. We're in denial about climate change or about change in the world around us. Misses the point of who we are. That's how come everyone's got to get out and vote or do whatever you can do to change that environment of the community, as well as the physical environment where we live. So in our last minute here, or a few seconds here, 30 seconds or so, I want to encourage everybody to look at yourself as take stock of where you're at today and go to that next stage. Make a difference. And if you happen to be in the Fairfield community, then join the Mental Health Alliance and come to our meetings. We've
got our first one today, Tuesday.
Well, this is being broadcast later, but it'll be on Tuesdays. Yeah. And send us an email, scott@ardencenter.com, and I'll sign you up on that list. And look at what you can do to foster that community today. So, final words, Ken?
Little bit of change every day, but also make the massive change. Doesn't matter, just change.
Change.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. And look at how you can do that for yourself today. Look at what that looks like for you to allow that shift to fully integrate. And don't think, well, I did it, so I'm done. Yep. Every day we get to the next step and the next step and the next step. And so do that for yourself today. Take a step. Be bold. I know it's hard sometimes to be bold with yourself and think, well, I've done it. We talked about quitting smoking. It might take 7 times. So you might be on time 6. Now's the time to make it last and to be full. Thank you, everyone. Bye.